For 22nd. Here we go. Motion to open the meeting.
You don't need a motion.
No, we don't need it. Okay, we'll call it one. Yeah.
I'll make a
Motion to action on is what we need, and then we'll do a roll call
Action
and,
on minutes and roll call, usually penciled in one.
yep.
And while we're doing that, we will, of course, point out there's a lot of new faces here in Manchester today. So let's start off with Auburn, Chris Sterndale.
Here, yes.
Thanks, Chris. From Bedford, our new chair, Bill Jean.
Here and yes.
And a new face, John Nelson.
Here, yes.
Thanks, John. Thanks for coming. I'm glad to have you. From Candia, we have Ron Laverdure.
Here and I'm staying.
Thanks, Ron. No one from Chester yet, which is a little bit unusual. Am I missing someone? Did someone sneak in? Nope.
No, Deb Muntz and Andrew Haddock are both excused.
Excused. Okay. Deerfield is in the house. We have Fred McGarry.
Here and yes.
Thanks, Fred, and Errol Rhodes.
Here and yes.
Thanks, Errol. From Derry, we have Richard Tripp.
Here and yes.
Thanks. From Francistown, we have Gary Schneckenberg.
Here and yes.
I think that's it from Francistown. From Goffstown online, we have Colleen Mayu.
Good morning, here and yes.
Thank you. No one from Hooksett yet today, I don't think. From Londonderry. Oh, and I'm seeing Jeff Moulton from Derry. Sorry, Jeff, didn't see you. So just now?
Yeah, just checked in. Here and yes.
All right, virtual. From Londonderry Virtual, we have Brian Battaglia.
Here and yes.
And in-house, we have Susan Brunel.
Here, I'm abstaining.
I'm sorry, that's Suzanne. What am I saying? We have Deb Levens.
Here and abstain.
Thank you so much for being here. We have Art Rugg.
Here and yes, 11 minutes.
And Manchester, we have Peter Capano.
Here and yes.
And I think I saw Eliza.
Here and yes.
Thank you. Augusta?
Yeah.
Thank you. And Kevin Shepherd?
Here and yes.
Excellent. From New Boston, Mark Sunan.
Here and yes.
And new from New Boston, thanks for being here, Ellen Campbell.
Hi, yes, and abstain.
Thank you. I don't think we have anyone from where, do we?
Yes, we do.
Oh, we do. That must be Danny Jean Stewart. Thank you so much for coming. Yay.
What's the question that we're voting yea or nay?
Minutes.
Yes. Well, August or September?
August.
August.
Yes.
Okay, great. Wyndham, we have Peter Griffin,
Here and yes.
Ed Lapointe,
Here and abstain.
and a new friend, DJ Withy.
Here and yes.
Thank you, DJ. All right, non-voting members, we have Jessica Wilcox from DES.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Good to see you
Good
all.
morning. We also have, we have several staff, but did I mention Brian Battaglia?
Yes, you did.
Oh, good. Okay, I'm on the ball. So we have Colin Lentz from Stratford.
Morning, everyone.
Morning, and we have Vincent Pagano from Central.
Hey, everyone. Vincent Pagano, Central New Hampshire Planning Commission.
Thank you. And we have, of course, like, we're loaded with staff, so there you go. I think that's it. I've made it through. Oh,
Bedford, Mark Snyder.
oh. I did not see you. Snuck in behind you, Bill.
And here and yes.
And also new member, thank you. We also have a member of the public, Alex Hawk. We just want to recognize Alex. Alex says he mostly watches the YouTube, but is here in person. So happy to have you.
Welcome to all the new faces. I'm assuming by virtue of that there is no edits to the minutes. Acceptance.
I'm going to guess that's correct.
Anyone? Virtually, any edits? All right. Then on to new business. First off, we have fiscal year 23-26 tip amendment number 7 that Nate will be updating us on.
All right.
And I'm told the pizza is on its way.
Most important action.
Let's see, can everyone see this in full screen mode online?
Danny, if you want my seat, I can move.
Yes.
You're okay.
Looks good.
All right, great. So without further ado, today we're going to give an overview of what is coming down the pipeline in tip amendment number 7. We just finished tip amendment number 6, 2 meetings ago, and no rest for us. We're right already into tip amendment number 7. I showed this slide every time we talk about a tip amendment, and it's especially appropriate today because our next agenda item is talking about another one of the items on this slide. So we are talking right now about tip amendment number 7. When we're talking about the tip being TIP, the Transportation Improvement Program, that is our 4-year federally required program of projects, the projects that are closest to construction and the furthest down the pipeline. In essence, the tip is the first 4 years of the 10-year plan. It just gets amended more often than the 10-year plan because those projects are closer to construction and there are changes and cost estimate updates and the like that we process regularly. The second item on our agenda today is going to be talking about the 10-year plan. And the 10-year plan, of course, is the first stage in New Hampshire where there is a formal funding commitment to advance a project to construction. While we look at projects out into a 20-year horizon in the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, our long-range plan, there's no actual funding commitment there. It's not until in New Hampshire it advances into the 10-year plan that becomes a formal funding commitment at the state level to bring that project to construction. So right now we're talking about the tip in green, and a little bit later this morning we'll be talking about the 10-year plan in blue. So amendment number 7, we, as always, work with the other MPOs and our colleagues at New Hampshire DOT to look at project additions and removals and timing adjustments and funding adjustments regularly. We're doing that in tip amendment number 7. You're getting a sneak preview today of the changes that will be in tip amendment number 7. We're going to be releasing amendment 7 on November 11th, which is a Monday, for a 10-day public comment period. That comment period will run until Friday, November 22nd, and then we will have a public hearing next month on the 26th of November to consider adoption of amendment number 7. So you're getting a sneak preview today of what's in amendment 7. So what is in amendment number 7? Let's walk through the changes that you will see when we release amendment 7. The first is a paving project that's scheduled on 101 in the towns of Candia and Raymond. So partially in our region, partially in the Rockingham region. This is a state-managed paving project. It's a fairly significant paving project. The start of construction is being moved from fiscal 25 to fiscal 26 based on the state's current timeline for construction. In Francistown, we have a local bridge project. It's Old County Road North over Collins Brook. This is seeing a funding increase for construction phase funding as well as inflationary adjustments for engineering and right-of-way phase funding. Linda, yeah, our pizza is here. Everybody will be excited that the pizza has just arrived. The reason for that amendment is just to reflect the current cost estimate for the project. The town of Francistown has been working closely with New Hampshire DOT on this, and there's a new cost estimate for the project, so we're reflecting that accordingly. In Hooksett, the reconstruction of 2 intersections, 3A in Hackett Hill Road and 3A in Main Street, that project is being removed from the tip. It's not being removed from the tip because it's not happening. In the tip, we only include things within the actual 4-year horizon of the tip, and our current 4-year horizon is 2023 to 2026. This project is not anticipated to have any expenditures until 2027. So it's actually technically beyond the tip period, and we're not going to be reflecting it in the current tip. But when we update to the next tip early next year, you'll see this project reappear with $2027 programmed. It's a similar story in Manchester. The rehabilitation of the Elm Street Bridge over the Boston and Maine Railroad corridor. This project is being removed from the tip as well. Again, it's not because the project is being eliminated. It's just that the earliest anticipated expenditures of funding for this project aren't now anticipated until 2029. So with that timeline, it's not going to be appearing in the current tip horizon. Also in Manchester, there is a CMAQ project, Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Program, what we call CMAQ or CMAQ project, to construct a northbound right turn lane and reconfigure the intersection of South Willow Street and Weston Road. This project is in final design now. It's headed towards construction in fiscal 25, and the amendment that we're going to be processing is to increase construction phase funding for that project to reflect the current cost estimate. So this project is quickly moving forward towards construction. Also in Manchester, the entrance to Derryfield School. This is a roundabout conversion at River Road and Bicentennial Drive. The amendment here is to increase engineering phase funding in fiscal 25 to reflect the current cost estimate for the project. This is a very interesting project here. There's more text on this slide than I would normally put, but it is a fascinating project. This was added at the end of the 10-year plan cycle 2 cycles ago at the request of Councilor Gatsis. This is early kind of an interim improvement on the way to the larger improvements at exit 6 and 7. And so not far from our office, there's a landscape supply place and a mobile station. That is the Eddy Road exit 6 southbound on-ramp area. And this project will be reconstructing that ramp to receive traffic from both directions on Eddy Road. And the other as well as acceleration lane improvements, which are much needed onto 293 southbound right there, if you've ever been through there. That road, that intersection will be signalized, as well as the intersection of the Eddy Road and the off-ramp. The other southbound off-ramp will be closed as part of that. So there's currently 2 short southbound off-ramps in proximity to each other. The one at Eddy Road near the mobile station is going to be improved to accept traffic from both directions, and the acceleration lane is going to be improved for the safety of the merge on the 293. Pretty interesting project here. It's one component of the larger exit 6 and 7 projects that will be coming later this decade. So that is seeing increased engineering funding, right-of-way funding to accommodate the ongoing work to develop that project. In New Boston, there's a new project being added to the tip. It is for engineering phase work for a culvert replacement. It's a redless bridge technically, but it's a large culvert on Route 13 over Cochrane Brook. This is a state managed project, and they are programming some engineering funds for fiscal 2026, which is within the horizon of our tip. So we want to make sure that that project is reflected in the tip accordingly. There are a couple of statewide programs seeing some adjustment. One of those is called the FLAP program, the Federal Lands Access Program. There are some adjustments happening here related to engineering and right-of-way and construction phase funding shifting between years. I'm showing this to you for full transparency. We carry this program in our tip. None of the projects currently programmed within the FLAP program directly affect our region. The only roads that are eligible for FLAP funding in our region are actually the Everett Dam access roads. So most of what is utilized in the FLAP program occurs in the northern part of the state in the White Mountain National Forest. But because there are theoretical expenditures in the future, we carry this program in our tip accordingly. But there are no current projects in the FLAP program that directly affect our region. There's also a statewide program for Section 5307 dollars, which is Federal Transit Administration Urban Transit Funding. There is a portion of those dollars that are apportioned for New Hampshire DOT projects. And so there is some funding being added to this program in fiscal 25 and 26 to reflect what the state anticipates the apportionments from federal transit will be. So just reflecting apportionments there.
Will that go to a specific project or?
They haven't specified where some of this supports Boston Express service historically. But they haven't designated exactly where all of the 25 and 26 funding will be going at this point. This is really an administrative adjustment just to reflect what they anticipate the amount of the apportionment. Historically, Boston Express bus service and has been one of the items funded under this program. We have some scope only changes as well. These are things that aren't changing in terms of timeline or funding, but some minor adjustments of scope, mostly administrative in nature. The Londonderry Route 28 and Stonehenge Road project, the approved scope currently reads operational and capacity improvements. The proposed scope is going to read operational and safety improvements at the intersection. That is a better reflection of the current design of the project. Not necessarily a capacity project, but more of a safety improvement project. And then lastly, really nothing substantive here with this change. Route 28 and Ralston Road intersection in Windham, what the approved scope is intersection improvements, Ralston Road and 28, and now it's changing to Ralston Road and 28 intersection improvements. Completely non-substantive there, but still a technical scope change that we need to reflect accordingly.
Watch your commas.
And with that, happy to answer any teachers. Happy to answer any questions if there are any on Amendment 7. More to come on that because you'll be seeing the actual Amendment 7 document next
First
month.
in the room, then we'll go to online. Go ahead.
Where's Everett Dam?
In where?
Where?
It's the what's the name of the state park there? Clough State Park.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, Clough State Park. That is I believe it's Army Corps land all through there.
I know where Clough State Park is. I've never heard of Everett Dam.
Yep,
If
that
you're-
is.
If you come in from, River Road and head up toward Clough, the dam is before you actually get to the entrance of the state park on your left. If you're out there, it's easy to find.
I think Peter had a question.
Yeah, Nate, the Ralston Road project, what is the scheduled date for that?
Let me answer that. I can answer that question. Can't answer. I want to say that it's 26 or 27. I can look it up when I get back to my desk and yeah.
Good.
I could follow up with you, Peter, on the exact schedule for that.
With all these, with respect to the changes where the funds are going up, or the funding is going up due to increased costs. Is that a net increase in funding or is it everything netted out? Is everything, is the underlying funding changing?
Most of these are state managed projects where DOT has certified that the federal funding is available to accommodate these increases. So yeah.
Funding does increase.
Yes, the funding does increase. Yeah.
Any other questions, Peter?
Nate, a couple of projects like Hookset 3A.
Yeah.
Manchester Elm Street Bridge. They're being delayed. Is that mostly local funding or is it the engineering phase they're in?
Both have federal funding associated with them. I know on the Manchester one, there's ongoing discussions between that's been a partnership between the city and state in recent years. And I know that they're coordinating on schedule for that. The Hooksett one is somewhat welcome because there's some ongoing work on Route 3 in Hooksett that's going to be happening, I think, in the 26th timeframe. And so I think the timing of the Hooksett project meets their desire to not have multiple major corridors in the town under construction at the same time.
Peter?
Nate, the funding for the roundabout at Bicentennial and River Road, that was 100% grant funded, wasn't it?
It's CMAQ funded. I believe it was matched by the Dairyfield School. So it's a federal project and that it's a CMAQ project, but I believe the match is coming from Dairyfield School.
Thank you.
Other questions in the room? Not seen anyone go online. Anyone virtual have any questions for Nate? If not, you want to take a quick pizza trip?
Yes, please. This would be a great time to go have
Jump into,
grab your pizza and then
Grab your
we'll
pizza.
dive into the 10-year plan whenever
10-year plan.
we're back.
Sorry, virtual people.
You have to provide your own pizza?
Well, next time you gotta come, Colin.
On the case, it wasn't worth making an amendment.
Oh.
My mention of the power.
The fiscal year 27-36 10-year plan update.
Yes.
Thank you. Take it away.
As promised, the other blue box on that slide I showed during the tip amendment presentation. So we've got a number of updates today on the fiscal 27 to 2036 10-year plan update process. Let's see. The last time we talked about this was in July. And in July, I gave an overview about the overall process to update the 10-year plan. I talked about funding parameters. I'm not going to go through that all again. But if you recall, our regional allocation is $10.56 million in year of expenditure dollars, which are inflation adjusted dollars to about 2036, the final year of the 10-year plan. We talked about evaluation criteria and the weightings that we're using for candidate projects. We talked about the engineering review process, and we talked briefly about the schedule. I'm not going to go through and rehash all of that information from July. I will note a couple of things on the schedule. Right now, we are in the engineering review process and doing initial evaluations of the 10-year plan candidate projects. We have our kind of first big milestone is November 8th of 2024. And that is when our short list of 10-year plan candidate projects is due to New Hampshire DOT. So what does the word shortlist mean in this context? It is defined as projects up to the value of the regional allocation plus one or two additional projects. So it's not our final set of project priorities. It's our short list of projects, our final set of project priorities, our final deployment of our regional allocation is due to New Hampshire DOT at the end of March 2025. But our first big milestone is the submission of a short list of projects. We received 10 candidate projects. I'll be walking through those in a few minutes, and ultimately submitted 9 of those 10 to our on-call engineering firm, VHB, for scoping and cost estimating. That work is going on right now. I'll give you a sense of kind of where some of the different projects are at and what the current thinking is, but we expect to have all of the scoping and cost estimation memos by the end of October, kind of in advance of that November 8th milestone. I have something here. I'm going to hide my meeting controls. What I call here a guiding principle, and it's kind of, we know that our regional funding allocation is only going to go so far. We're not going to be able to fund all of the candidate projects with our regional 10-year plan funding allocation, but we want to find a meaningful path forward for all of the candidate projects, whether they are ultimately included in the 10-year plan or not. So as I'm walking through some of the projects this afternoon, we're looking through the lens of whether or not a project may be a better fit for a different funding source other than the 10-year plan. And there are a couple of examples of that I'll highlight. And we're also looking at whether a phased implementation approach for larger projects might help us stretch our dollars farther. In other words, could we do a smaller version of the project as a phase 1 now and build upon that in future 10-year plan cycles with additional phases? So we're trying to think creatively about how to move as many balls forward as possible, given our funding limitations.
Nate?
Yes.
If something has its own source of funding, is it not part of these 10 plans, or is 10 plans included that like a grant attached to it?
So when we talk about the 10-year plan, in most cases, we're talking about core federal aid formula dollars that come to New Hampshire. In most cases, that's surface transportation block grant federal funding. There are other federal programs that get awarded through separate processes. And so as I go through some of these, you'll hear me talk about, some of those opportunities are, but not all dollars in New Hampshire are programmed exclusively through the 10-year plan process. There are transportation alternatives and CMAQ and Highway Safety Improvement Program and other funding sources that get programmed through separate processes. There are also federal discretionary programs that can apply directly to the federal government for discretionary funding for certain projects. So this is a significant, the 10-year plan process is a significant component of the overall transportation funding picture, but it's not the only path forward for a project. So what are the projects? Let's walk through some of these. I would have done this last month, but we were otherwise occupied with our annual meeting. So this is the first time you're seeing some of the candidate projects. Our TAC has seen these a couple of times now. The first is in the town of Auburn. It is a crossing of the Rockingham Rail Trail at Route 121. You can see it's a skewed crossing. The Rockingham Rail Trail is a popular bicycle and pedestrian facility. And talking with VHB and talking with New Hampshire DOT, our initial assessment is that this could be improved significantly through what's called a rectangular rapid flashing beacon installation. If you're familiar with those, you push a button, strobe lights get the attention of drivers to slow down and allow the crossing. We have assigned this project to VHB for engineering review to determine whether or not indeed a rectangular rapid flashing beacon is the appropriate improvement for this crossing. We think it is. It's likely to be a very low-cost project. This could be in the $50,000 range. And there's some question about whether or not a project of that size, whether or not it's appropriate to wait 10 years to bring a project like that to construction when it's a fairly obvious low-hanging fruit through the 10-year plan process. So we're proceeding as if it will go into the 10-year plan, but at the same time, we're having some conversations with folks within DOT about whether or not this type of project could fit into the Highway Safety Improvement Program or other efforts that are going on at the state. In the town of Bedford, and I'm going alphabetically here by town. So we started in Auburn, now we're at B for Bedford. This is a project that we had on the proposal 2 years ago. It's back for additional consideration. It's a multi-use path adjacent to Route 101 from Wallace Road to the Amherst Town line in the town of Bedford. The concept here is a 10-foot wide paved multi-use path parallel to Route 101. We have submitted this project to VHB for scoping and cost estimating, but there is what I call here a chicken versus egg scenario, in that the design of a multi-use path and what goes into constructing a multi-use path there is going to be dependent on what the future layout of Route 101 in that area is, and whether or not that's a 5-lane width to the Amherst Town line in the future, or a 3-lane width, or some hybrid, matters a lot in terms of how a parallel multi-use path would be constructed and what the cost of that is. 2 years ago, you may recall that we programmed some funding in the 10-year plan for a project that is now known in the 10-year plan as 13692F. That project is an engineering study, an update of the Route 101 corridor study from 20 plus years ago for the town of Bedford and DOT to come to consensus on what the future layout of the corridor will be, whether it will be 5 lanes or 3 lanes or a hybrid. Our approach here is to add some supplemental funding potentially to that 13692F project to explicitly include preliminary design of the multi-use path as part of that engineering study, so that the multi-use path is considered alongside the future layout of the project when that engineering study happens. And so that, because we have that chicken and egg scenario, this we think is a way to think creatively about how to move the idea of a multi-use path forward in a tangible way, but also in a way that we're not spending time engineering something that's only going to be superseded by the outcome of an engineering study of the main corridor later. So I know that's kind of complex, but We've talked with the town and with New Hampshire DOT about this idea, and we think this idea has a lot of merit. So more to come on that, but yeah, sure.
Is this, is Amherst considering extension of this project beyond their town line?
I don't know that there have been discussions with Amherst about what happens on their side of the town line.
Okay.
It's just, there are the future layout of the 101 corridor. If you, there was a corridor study done about 20 years ago that prescribed a 5-lane cross section down the entire, all the way to the Amherst town line. It's unclear whether or not that's supported or desirable anymore. A 5-lane cross section all the way to the Amherst town line. A few years ago, New Hampshire DOT replaced a bridge there within this segment, the Pulpit Brook Bridge, and that does not accommodate a long-term 5-lane cross section. That bridge only accommodates a 3-lane cross section. So on one hand, we have an old corridor study that prescribed a 5-lane cross section, and we have some other activities that have happened in between that prescribe a 3-lane cross section. The engineering study that is in this project 13692 will help for everybody to reach, consensus on what the long-term future of the corridor is. And by adding some supplemental funding to explicitly include this multi-use path in that, we can make sure that the multi-use path is considered as part of the, overall long-term needs of the 101 corridor.
What's a 5-lane corridor?
Either 2 lanes in each direction with a continuous left turn lane, or 2 lanes in each direction with a divided median of some sort that would otherwise be a full lane width.
Oh, all right, thank you.
Excuse me, Nate. So does this mean that this was not referred to VHB or?
We have referred it to VHB.
Okay.
But one of the things that we asked VHB to do as part of their analysis is to give us a price for what it would cost to add 30% design to the 13692F project. We think it's low 6 figures to accomplish that. And that would save us, I think, it would coordinate the multi-use path with the long-term needs of the 101 corridor very expensively, which I think is a win for the town and helps move this ball forward. There's another project in the town of Bedford. It is a local bridge on a local road, Catesby Lane over McQuaid Brook. There's a long story here. This was a state aid bridge program project for a number of years. So it had funding through the state aid bridge program. The state aid bridge program is the typical program that is actually state funded, not federal funded, that typically funds local bridges on local roads. There was a bridge failure for a different bridge in a different part of the town of Bedford, and Bedford and New Hampshire DOT jointly decided to deploy the funds that had been programmed for this bridge to deal with the emergent issue on the other bridge. That has been done. However, now there's no funding program for Catesby Lane over McQuaid Brook. And so Bedford has put this forward for consideration in the 10-year plan process. In most cases, we would advise that for a project like this, the town seek state aid bridge funding, New Hampshire DOT. There is no current bridge solicitation, though. We've talked with New Hampshire DOT about this. In all likelihood, we don't think that this project, based on the nature of the project, local bridge on a local road, would be particularly competitive in the 10-year plan process, given the other types of projects that we see. However, there are some overtopping issues related to the design of the current bridge environmentally. In terms of, the hydrology of the water and the bridge, there are overtopping concerns, and that may open the door to a federal discretionary program called the PROTECT program, which is a federal transportation resilience program. And in talking with New Hampshire DOT, both us and New Hampshire DOT think that there might be a potential for the town of Bedford to apply for Protect program funding directly to help move this bridge forward because of that overtop condition. So what we did is assign this to VHB for scoping and cost estimating. They're going to look at some of the previous work that's been done. They will give us a defensible cost estimate and a scope of work for the bridge replacement. And then we're going to hopefully use that to help Bedford apply for Protect program funding. Use that work, that scoping and cost estimating work as the basis of a federal discretionary grant application. So when I was talking earlier about projects that may be better fits with other funding sources outside of the 10-year plan, this is one of those. We think that this might be a fit for Protect program funding.
So you have this here in order to get the cost estimate done?
Yes, to do some of the groundwork, the scoping and cost estimate, and then be able to take that work that VHB does and use it as the basis of that application.
Is this one of these bridges that might be at risk of washing out?
Yes, I mean, the overtopping concern would,
Yeah.
that's, yeah. Moving, we've made it to H in the alphabet, and we are in Hooksett now. And you may recognize this particular intersection from above. This is the exit 11 ramp with Hackett Hill Road and the exit 11 park and ride facility. So the town of Hooksett has requested an intersection improvement project at this intersection. I'll leave it here for a second. We have assigned this to VHB for scoping and cost estimating. If you can see my cursor, most of the turning movement traffic is coming up Hackett Hill Road and going into the tolls this way, and then the other way coming out of the tolls and going left. The town said, we're open to a roundabout or a signal, you know, whatever works. In all likelihood, because of the very, the distinct pattern of turning movements that occurs here, a roundabout is likely going to be the preferred solution. A signal with all of that left turning movements, any signal would probably delay or, have traffic queuing up through the toll booths and beyond. So I expect VHB to come back with a roundabout alternative for this intersection. So more to come on this one. Also in Hooksett, the widening of Route 3 from Legends Drive to Hunt Street. This is a capacity expansion proposal. This is the next unimproved section north of a current project that's making its way to construction right now, which is known as Hooksett 29611. Hooksett 29611 is the widening of Route 3 between Alice Ave and Martins Ferry Road. So this is north of that section. And we have assigned it to VHB for scoping and cost estimating. We expect this project to be well into the 8 figures. And it will be a significant project. It is too large in all likelihood for our regional allocation. It would consume our entire regional allocation, I expect. And so this is one where we do need to look at other funding sources because there are some federal discretionary programs that could potentially fund a project of this size. RAISE is one of those, and Manchester was successful a couple of years ago in getting a RAISE grant. That is the Rebuilding America's Infrastructure for Sustainability and Equity program. I think that's the acronym. Before it was RAISE, it was known as BUILD. Before it was BUILD, it was known as TIGER, but it is the core federal discretionary program. This may be a candidate for that type of program, given the size and given the arterial status of Route 3 but it is a challenge for us at the regional level to figure out how to move a project like this forward, given its size. So that's why we're having VHB scope it, but again, we may be using that scope as the basis of a RAISE grant application or a congressionally directed spending application to help move this one forward. In the town of Londonderry, Route 102 safety improvements between Young Road and High Range Road in Londonderry. This is an area where there is a significant crash history, including a fatal crash history. We have applied a couple of months ago in partnership with the town of Londonderry for a road safety audit with New Hampshire DOT. And through the road safety audit process is a very specific process for high crash locations where New Hampshire DOT convenes a team of engineers, fire, police, town staff, planning, abutters to the area to go out and look at a particular problem area in terms of safety, whether it's a segment or a specific intersection. In this case, it would be a segment, and develop based on that, do an engineering analysis and develop recommendations for short and long-term safety improvements. Short-term things might be pavement markings or signs or vegetation clearing or other things that could happen in a short-term time period. Long-term would be more traditional infrastructure improvement projects. That road safety audit, in talking with New Hampshire DOT, they haven't made any formal announcements yet, but they have told us that there is a very high likelihood that that road safety audit is going to be approved early in 2025. And for that reason, we think that the road safety audit is the appropriate next step there, because that will give us a good objective report about what needs to be done. We don't know yet what needs to be done in terms of safety. We need that road safety audit to point us in the right direction about what can be done to improve the situation in that segment. So our recommendation here is we expect, and we have that, DOT all but told us it's going to be approved in early 2025 without telling us, explicitly, but they've given us every indication that it's going to be approved in 2025. Let's let that road safety audit process occur. Let's see what comes out of it in terms of short and long-term solutions. And the road safety audit process could open the door to what's called Highway Safety Improvement Program funding that is controlled by DOT directly, which is a separate source of federal funding. Or if the recommendations from the road safety audit are too costly for HSIP to fund alone, then we would look at a 10-year plan project to implement the road safety audit recommendations. So the next step here, we think, is the road safety audit in early 2025. And let's see what short and long-term recommendations come out of that. In Manchester, Exit 8 and Wellington Road interchange improvements. When I talked about phasing earlier, I said sometimes we look, is there a smaller version of the project we can put into the 10-year plan now and then build upon in the future? This is an example of that. 2 years ago, we put a smaller version of this project in the 10-year plan. We put a project in the 10-year plan to deal with the Mammoth Road intersection and the ramp intersection and limited bicycle lanes within that area. Bicycle lanes being the orange lines here. The long-term, because we were limited in terms of what our regional allocation could fit. Now, 2 years later, Manchester has said we'd like to extend the bicycle lanes all the way to Lindstrom Lane to the east, which is what the original overall project intended to accomplish. So we put a phased version of that in the 10-year plan 2 years ago. And now Manchester is seeking supplemental funding for that project to kind of finish the remainder of it, which is so the extension of those orange bicycle lanes east to Lindstrom Lane.
Nick, does that push the project out, or will it kind of continue?
We'd have to have a conversation with DOT about whether it got programmed separately or whether we could just simply add it. This one is still pretty far out. I think it's 2034 is construction, so we may have some because it just went in 2 years ago. Yeah, it's programmed right now for 7.445 million with construction in 2034. So there's a conversation to be had there, but if we ended up adding supplemental funding to it, we may be able to stay on that same timeline. Maybe if the front office is willing to work with us on that. So we have assigned this project to VHB for updating the cost estimate and seeing what the delta is between what's currently programmed and what it would take to get bicycle lanes all the way to Lindstrom Lane to the east. Also in Manchester, an application for an engineering study of Beach and Maple Street active transportation. This would involve an engineering study to determine whether or not it's feasible to reallocate a lane on Maple and Beach, kind of in this, the map here on the left is maybe difficult to read from a distance, but basically from Webster to South Willow Street is the immediate study area. What might be possible on Maple and Beach in that area? And the idea here would be to see whether it's feasible to reallocate existing lane space on both of those roads for active transportation purposes, whether bicycle lane or a separated multi-use path. So instead of 2-lane one-way arterials, 1 lane in each direction with the remainder of that space being used for some other form of active transportation, whatever that may be. The city has applied.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And that's already happened on Maple from Bridge to Webster, correct?
Yeah, north of the bridge that has happened on Maple.
Right.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so that's the active, that's what.
That would be, it would potentially something like that, but on the remainder of those corridors.
Okay, thank you.
So the city has applied for federal discretionary funding for this engineering study through a program called the Active Transportation Infrastructure Investment Program, or ATIIP for short. Taking a belt and suspenders approach, they've also applied for 10-year plan consideration in the event that ATIIP application isn't successful. This is a secondary option for getting this engineering study programmed somehow. And so they have applied for consideration for that reason. In the town of New Boston, we've called it here town center improvements, but you can see it on your screen. It's a reconfiguration of some of the key intersections on 77 and 13 in the town of New Boston's kind of village center. And this comes out of a context-sensitive solutions process, basically sort of a conceptual design process that occurred in 2008 with New Hampshire DOT, Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission, and a number of local stakeholders. This image actually comes from some of the work that was done through that process, showing how intersections can be realigned and how pedestrian connections might work. Even though that process happened in 2008, there remains strong local support to implement these types of improvements in the town of New Boston. And so we have assigned this to VHB for scoping and cost estimating. It'll be interesting to see what comes back. I look forward to seeing what comes back. This is something that the town has been working towards for quite some time, obviously since 2008. So it's been a long time coming, and we'll see what the ultimate cost estimate is that comes back. Lastly, I think this is the last one on our candidate list, is the town of Windham. You may remember this from 2 years ago. This is improvements to the Windham Greenway from Meeting House and Old Mill Road to the right-of-way of I-93. The idea here is to convert an abandoned railroad right-of-way into a 10-foot wide multi-use path. It's about 2¼ miles overall. We have assigned it to VHB for scoping and cost estimating. This is one where a phased approach, we've asked VHB to specifically look at phasing options for this one. 2.27 miles is a lot. Could we, what are the options of doing the first mile of that as a first phase of the project? Does that become more manageable to fit into our regional allocation and still be able to advance some element of the project? So VHB is going to look at phasing options there. There's also worth noting for everybody in the room, DOT has announced that there will be a pending solicitation for Transportation Alternatives Program funding, or TAP for short. They have put out the timeline of a solicitation being announced in late fall, whatever that may mean, probably sometime around Thanksgiving, I would guess. Although I don't know the timeline for sure, but that would be my guess. Transportation Alternatives Program, Eliza, going back to your question before, this is a separate pot of funding that is solicited separately outside. It happens concurrently to the 10-year plan process, but is a separate pot of funding. This funds active transportation. This funds bicycle and pedestrian projects, mostly in New Hampshire, non-motorized transportation projects. So rail trail projects, sidewalk projects, multi-use paths, things along those lines are in the wheelhouse of the Transportation Alternatives Program. So an early heads up to all of your communities that this solicitation is coming. If you have projects that you're thinking about that fall into that category, we expect a solicitation announcement in the coming weeks. And again, that solicitation may provide a secondary opportunity for the town of Windham to secure funding for this particular project, given that it's that what Windham is looking at here fits very nicely into the eligibility of the TAP program.
Nate, for the TAP, what does a plan project need to have? Does it have to have like planning or engineering?
DOT will release some guidelines. The more developed the project is, the stronger the case will be, obviously. They haven't historically required full engineering review like the 10-year plan process does. That said, we are going through engineering review for Windham, and Windham can use the engineering report that's developed to help build their case should they choose to apply for TAP. So sometimes we can leverage some of the work that's been done through the 10-year plan process to help our community's TAP applications be as competitive as possible. But historically, they have not required the full engineering review. There is there will be an application form that will require, basic information about the scope of the project, the purpose of the project, the cost estimate for the project, and how the project addresses different criteria in the TAP program. So they will be releasing all of that information in the coming months. There typically is a cap. I think it's been $1.5 million in previous years for a single TAP project. Whether or not they adjust that cap for this cycle, I don't know yet. But typically $1.5 million federal dollars for any individual TAP program has been their ceiling. For any individual TAP project, I should say, $1.5 million. So, working towards my conclusion today, when we look at our candidate projects, we think that the ones on the left, the 7 on the left, are probably the best fits to pursue 10-year plan funding for. We think the 3 on the right, Bedford Catesby Lane, we talked about that being a protect program candidate. Hooksett, the Route 3 widening, given the size and cost of that project, being a potential RAISE or CDS application. And then in Londonderry, looking for the results for that road safety audit process in early 2025 to happen, and then springboarding off of that towards HSIP funding. So now kind of focusing on those 7 on the left and bringing it back to our first milestone, which is our short list. So the Auburn project, the Bedford adding supplemental funding for engineering of that multi-use path to the engineering study, and Manchester Beach and Maple Street. All 3 of those, we think Auburn is probably, we're awaiting final figures. We think Auburn's about 50,000. We think Bedford low 6 figures. We think Manchester's engineering study is probably in the $500,000 range. All 3 of those combined probably put us at less than $1 million in today's dollars. So what does our short list look like? We think that based on that, and depending on what phasing options DOT presents to us, we think that we could probably fund 5 or even potentially 6 of the candidate projects with our regional allocation. So what can we fund with our regional allocation plus 1 or 2 projects being our short list? that leads us to all 7 of those projects are our viable shortlist. And then we will continue to work. Our TAC has appointed a subcommittee of what we call disinterested members, those who did not represent communities that did not submit project applications, to help work with us to continue evaluating the projects according to the criteria. But at this point, we think our short list is all 7 of those projects based on the fact that we think 5 or 6 are going to be able to be funded, plus 1 or 2. That brings us to 7. Our short list is therefore those 7 that we just talked about. And that's what we would submit to New Hampshire DOT on November 8th. And then from there, DOT will spend 3 or 4 months reviewing those projects. They do their own review they have an internal 10-year plan review committee. We will send them the engineering reports and the application forms from the communities. They will review those and give us their own comments and their own thoughts about those projects. We expect to get that back in February, and then our charge will be to submit a final set of regional project priorities and decide how we're going to deploy our regional allocation by the end of March. So you'll hear much more about the 10-year plan in February and March meetings, because that review process on the state's part will take some time. So no final decisions, in terms of regional project priorities and how, final decision about how our funding allocation is going to be used until that timeline. But in terms of our short list, our first milestone, that's what we're thinking. And so happy to, I think that's my last slide. You've heard a lot of me talking today, so I will stop there and answer any questions you may have.
Questions in the room? Liza?
So I guess this is what I don't understand about the funding. So if the Manchester Beach Maple project already has a different source of funding,
They've applied.
They've applied. Okay, so if okay.
They've applied. Yeah, that doesn't mean they could. It doesn't mean they're going to be awarded that funding. Yeah.
So then is the idea that if they do get the funding, it won't be in the 10-year plan? If they don't get the funding, it will be in the 10-year
plan? We would, depending on if they get a positive funding announcement from ATIIP, then we'd have a conversation about what do we do with this project and how do we redeploy those funds. If they don't get a positive, if ATIIP doesn't fund that project, then this is the suspenders, the belt and suspenders approach to getting the study.
And then that's a planning grant, the ATIP.
It's an engineering study.
It's an engineering study.
Yeah.
So could the implementation be part of the 10-year plan?
Eventually, yeah. The engineering study will tell us what's going to be implemented and how much it would cost.
Okay, but you couldn't include that in this 10-year plan because you don't have the study.
We don't have a basis to know what that is yet.
So the funding is just for a study, it's not.
Yeah, the engineering study will ultimately yield the answers of what should be done there and how much is it going to cost. And then that becomes the basis of an implementation project.
Would the study be done in 10 years and?
If it went through the 10-year plan, potentially, yeah, we could have a conversation with DOT about moving it up yeah, this again, like I say, it's the ATIIP, if that's funded, gets that study done much faster than the 10-year plan would. The 10-year plan, I've used the term a couple of times, belt and suspenders, but it really is. I mean, it's the other option to getting the engineering study programmed in the event that ATIIP doesn't happen.
Richard, you go.
You presented like what, 10 projects?
10 projects, yeah.
How many applications were there?
10.
There's 10?
Yep.
So you reviewed every application?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. You presented all the applications?
All the applications.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions, Peter?
Nate, the Exit 11 hosted project got me thinking about that area.
Mm-hmm.
And the bigger problem is getting from Hackett Hill Road onto Route 3A.
Yeah.
Is that project anywhere?
That project is, we talked about it in the TIP amendment, but looking at 2027 right now for that project is in the 10-year plan.
Hackett and 3A.
Hackett and 3A plus Hackett, plus 3A and Main Street. Both of those intersections are together in a project in the 10-year plan, which we talked about it in tip amendment number 7 of removing it from the tip because we don't anticipate any expenditures until 2027. But it is in the plan and it is under development.
Kevin, you still have a question?
So this region is made up of many, Blackwell, Manchester, and many smaller towns. Do you find it difficult for some of the smaller towns to maybe submit it because they may not have an engineer on staff? The Southern New Hampshire planning to reach out to them and advise them and work with them that make a selectman or town council work?
Yeah, I think in recent 10-year plan cycles, we've seen more engagement from the rural communities because we have the engineering. We are, we have hired an on-call engineer to help scope these projects. 2 years ago, we put the intersection in Deerfield in the 10-year plan, which was a rural project. We have New Boston in this cycle, with town center improvements. So I think, anecdotally, the last couple of cycles, since we've had the on-call engineer available to us, we've seen better engagement and better results from the rural applications in the region.
Okay, question.
One last question.
So this goes to the state and they go through some process. It sounds like a bit of a black box to me. Are there ways to appropriately so influence or to help inform and educate them so that our post projects are considered, given the right levels of consideration? And within that, not only approval of the project, but placement in that 10-year window.
Well, let me answer the second part first. The 10-year window, all new projects going into the 10-year plan are going to the back of the line. So the 2 out years of the 10-year plan, anything we put new in the 10-year plan is going to be programmed in either 2035 or 2036, the final 2 years of the 10-year plan. The ability to move things up and down in the 10-year plan is largely based on our willingness to offer concessions that offset that. So if we want to move $1 million project up 5 years, generally speaking, we need to offer them $1 million worth of delay because the funding has to be constrained in that way. So we expect that anything we put in the 10-year plan is likely going to be programmed in the 2 final out years, in this case, 2035 and 2036. In terms of their review committee, they have a review committee. It is, there are various project managers and bureau administrators and others that serve on that. I believe Bill Oldenburg from the front office is the chair of the 10-year plan committee, or at least helps coordinate it. Our regional allocation, we have deference there. So we have an MOU with New Hampshire DOT that says as long as we are giving them a fiscally constrained set of projects within that regional allocation, that they will place those in the 10-year plan without change. The review process is a way for them to say, we don't think your engineer's figure of, your engineer estimated this at, $2 million and we think it's 3. And then we have that conversation about why they think it's 3 and why we think it's 2. And that helps us to sort out some of the fiscal constraint issues. So their review tends to focus on the defensibility of the cost estimate and the engineering assumptions that went into the cost estimate. But they do, as long as we're in agreement that a project is going to likely cost X, and that's within our regional allocation, they will put it in the 10-year plan. But again, it's going to go in the 2 out years to start.
Thanks, Dave. We'll go to our virtual audience. Anyone online have any questions? If not, we'll move on. Not seeing any. Thanks. No action required on this item today.
No, if anybody had any issue with our proposed short list, now would be the time to air it. But I think it sounds like we're all on the same page. So,
any other business that we need to attend to, MPO? If not, look for a motion to adjourn the MPO.
Second.
All in favor? All right. Opposed? Carries. All right. Let's call to order the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission, action on minutes of August 27, 2024, as well as roll call.
All right. We're gonna go quick because we need to gain a little time for James. Auburn, we have Chris,
Here or not?
Bedford, Bill,
Here, yes.
and John,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
and Candia, we have Ron.
Here.
Dear, thank you. And Deerfield, Fred,
Here, yes.
Errol, Derry, we have Jeff online.
Here and yes.
Richard,
Here, yes.
Francistown, Gary, Goffstown, Colleen. Oh,
Chuck Freiberger.
oh, Barbara Griffin
Hello,
in disguise.
Zach. I have no idea how I did it, but I am disguised.
Oh, my goodness. Whether you're in here or online, you're something. All right. Thank you, Barbara. That's hysterical. Londonderry, we have Brian,
Here and yes.
Suzanne, Deborah, Art,
Here and yes.
Manchester, Peter,
Here and yes.
Eliza, Kevin,
Here and yes.
New Boston, we have Mark
Here, yes.
and Ellen,
Here, abstain.
and where Danny, Jean,
Here, yes.
Wyndham, Peter,
Here, yes.
Edgar,
Here.
and we have DJ.
Here, yes.
Sorry, Ed. Sorry, I'm reading.
Thank you for the correction.
So
Thank you, Sylvia.
formal.
We're ready to advance on to new business, 2025 to 2050 Regional Comprehensive Plan Update. James Vales,
All right.
are you leading the charge?
Very much. Take a minute here to get this image up on the screen. It's not really all that legible, but at least our online followers, our online attendees can follow along.
No one can capture an audience like Nate on transportation, right? Oh, my word.
Bring all of you to tears.
10 projects, 45 minutes. No one can do it like Nate.
He has all those acronyms down and knows where the whole.
Oh, yeah. Every time I can look at
It's like-
those. All right, well, James is gonna capture us as well, I'm sure.
Oh, that's a hard act to follow. I admittedly get a little bit of a goosebumps just watching Nate kind of navigate all the moving parts for the 10-year plan. So many projects, so many priorities. It's quite interesting to watch, and I don't know that anybody else does it quite as well as he does. So we're very lucky here at the Southern Planning Commission to have him. Well, this format map may look pretty similar. I gave, I think a month or two ago, gave an outline for the update to the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, the MTP, kind of coined Connections 2050. Some of you may have seen an email soliciting outreach for a survey that's currently active for the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. And that is a long-range planning process specific to our transportation system. Well, we're gonna be doing basically a very similar exercise of updating our regional comprehensive plan, which takes into consideration many factors that affect land use. And so we're going to go through the exact same, well, I shouldn't say exact, but a similar planning process as the MTP. We're gonna set up a web page. We're gonna update this existing standing plan, and the plan is really derived from some responsibilities we have as a regional planning commission. And so a couple months ago, when I talked about the MTP, I talked about the responsibility we have as an MPO. Well, here we are on the SNHPC side, and guess what? As a regional planning commission, we have responsibility to the state to update this comprehensive plan. So that's what the comprehensive plan is and what it's about. Why is this plan important? Well, there's three bullets here on the slide, and the core of it is that if we look to the future, do some proactive planning, we can anticipate and ensure that we have better outcomes and better direction for achieving the goals of the region. The plan also creates a vision to affirm what we want the future to look like. And so this plan basically encompasses the public's input process for helping guide the vision. And it's not a simple thing, right? Like there's lots of diverse views within the region. And so what we do is put together a process that collects all those views and develops statements and a vision that reflects a common belief amongst our citizenry of the entire region. And that really encompasses consensus building. Once that vision and consensus is built as part of the plan, it's really a pretty effective tool for stakeholders, elected officials, and local municipal staff, regional staff to use that plan as a guide for making decisions that affect policy and planning. So what are the key components of the regional comprehensive plan? Well, the first is defining the region, which is existing conditions. Look around the region today, what exists? There's a road there, there's housing over here, there's power lines and sewer systems and water lines, and we want to take stock and inventory all that stuff as part of analysis of the region. After existing conditions have been identified, we take inventory or take stock of outside forces. So these are things we can't really control, like how the Federal Reserve sets interest rates or new technologies that come along that change how we do business in society, or even societal values at large. Things like demographics, how old we're getting as a region, or how quickly our population increases. We have some control there, but we don't have full control of that, especially at the regional level. So we want to understand those things, understand where we're going over the next couple of decades so that we can plan accordingly based on those outside factors that we can't control. We talked about creating a vision. That is a key component of the plan. So once that vision's made, it gets established as a segment, a section of the plan that helps clearly define what we want the future to look like. You have a future land use. And so one of the things that happens with any master planning exercise that you might do as a local level is your local master plan is required to have a future land use map. Well, we'll do a similar thing here. We'll kind of identify where we think future uses, future land will be used in different ways or the same ways in the future. Some towns, maybe nothing or very little changes. Maybe other places, there's big ambitious ideas about how to change a place. I don't know the answers to these things, but what part of this planning process will help identify what those future land uses are and illustrate them in a map. Finally, you have recommendations, and traditionally, recommendations have been identified as project lists or strategy lists, the kind of things you would see that would kind of, well, lack of a simpler term, inventory all the different types of ways that the region might want to take action to improve the future or realize the future vision that they've created. It's important to note as part of this comprehensive planning process that there'll be public engagement. Public engagement is core to how the plan is updated. If SNHPC did this in a black box, or as stated before, or did it without reaching out to the public and understanding where their priorities were, they'd probably get it wrong because we don't know what the general public's opinion is without taking their pulse and asking their input. And so we'll conduct a survey. We'll put together informational videos and publish those. Ideally, what I'd love to do is come out to some local communities and present findings at local board meetings and gather a pulse that way as well. And then finally, once the report is developed, we have a public comment period before anything is adopted by this board here. So all this work needs to be done by December of 2026, which is nice. We have a lot of time to put this together, a little over 2 years. And so that gives us some breathing room to do this correctly and not rush the process. And we still have a budget that we have to work through. We're very lucky. This region and I don't know, is all the other regions in the state were awarded a grant from HUD to do this work. We've kind of been putting this off for some time because we haven't had a dedicated funding source for this. So we're very lucky that HUD has stepped in to offer us a little bit of funding to help us cover the staff time it takes to update what is a rather complex plan. As I noted, public engagement, we'll be doing a survey, we'll put together a webpage, we'll put out a press release when we're ready to launch for public engagement. And just to wrap this whole description up, my next step in developing this plan is to put together a more detailed work plan and timeline so that I have a clear understanding of what the milestones are and what work needs to be done within, say, each quarter between now and December of 2026. So, you know, kind of a prelude to the project launch, but in a few months, you guys should be hearing from me with a URL for a webpage, not too different from the big flyer on the core quarter over here for Connections 2050. And we'll be going live with a project. So I don't know if anybody has questions about what they've seen.
Is there a regional comprehensive plan or is this the first one?
This is an update of an existing plan.
Okay, is the existing plan available?
Yes, it's live on the SNHBC webpage. I would note there was a lot of money available to do that comprehensive planning update.
It's called Granite State Futures. Some of you may have remembered that or been part of different workshops. I know I was the town planner in Exeter at the time, and I took part in, I think, a transportation focus group from Rockingham Planning Commission. So yeah, it's to update that plan. And one thing I'll throw in here that Jim didn't mention, part of this, aside from updating that plan, is to provide communities with an opportunity to have a pilot program. And that project was in part how I think Stratford Regional Planning Commission, who we can thank for helping steer all the regional planning commissions and getting the funding from HUD. But we opted all to do this pilot program, and that was a promise to sort of move the regional housing update to a next level. And so you'll learn more about that as Jim guides this whole process, but that is a bit of a unique aspect to this particular update. What did I miss, Jim?
No, I'm really glad you brought that up. It's a little amorphous right now what that project will be, but one thing's for certain, it will be we'll have to develop a criteria and determine how to select a project to run as a pilot. And so it's not something we'll do in every single community, but it is something that will highlight a potential avenue for implementing more housing within our region. I think that's accurate.
Yeah, and one of the things that Jim has also done, he's been for the MTP, so I'm going to start throwing out acronyms, the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. Jim has gone around and done sort of community conversations with different staff members in every single community, and also looked at all the master plans. And so that will also help guide this update, because we know, like I'm, for example, working with Londonderry on their master plan update. We're also assisting Chester. Every single person probably in the room, I wouldn't guess, well, maybe, has somehow been related to a master plan update in their community, many of you anyway. And so this is now just a much, it's the regional level of that. And so certainly Jim, is looking at that and seeing how people, want the different aspects that he's talked about, how they want to move forward as we grow in New Hampshire.
Yeah, and that, we actually put together a little finding summary of reviewing every master plan in the community, as well as a detailed report of interviews with stakeholders across the region. I got to everyone but Ware, so if Ware wants to do an interview, I'm still willing to do it now, so happy to connect with them and make sure they're represented so we can say that we're reaching every community in the region. But all that content is already live on the Connections 2050 webpage because the process happened under the MTP as a way to kind of manage budgets. So if you want to see that information, it's already exists on the Connections 2050 project webpage under documents.
Is there a link on Southern New Hampshire for that connection?
I believe so, under the MTP, which is kind of buried, but it is up on the flyer there. And maybe what I'll do is talk to Adam about getting the link put right on the splash page.
That'd be awesome.
Sake of time, one more question, Rich.
You're talking about a survey. Is that active?
There is active surveys. So this flyer here on the cork board for Connections 2050 is for the Metropolitan Transportation Plans. And that survey is collecting information on people's priorities for how to program transportation out to the year 2050.
That's for that one, but there's no, for this plan.
In a couple months, we'll do a separate survey.
So the website, that'll be part of the website, I take it?
Yes.
And the website's not active right now.
That's right. We haven't started that.
Yeah, this is lagging a few months behind.
Well, that's okay. I got one more, well, this is more a comment than a question. It's interesting that you use the word visioning. That to me is fairly soft. I would think that you would have, a little harder words like goal setting, whereas visioning, something implies something that goal setting does not.
Yeah, no, I think as part of visioning, you set your goals and objectives. If you look at how we did the MTP, it's a similar thing. We have a vision, goals.
I'll have to look at the MTP. Thank you.
We're following the same process.
All right, thanks, James. Other business that we need to?
Bill.
Real briefly under other business.
Yes, sir.
Sorry.
I'm just gonna say, just real briefly, every 4 years, the Federal Highway Administration and Federal Transit Administration jointly conduct a review of the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission. And how we're performing with our transportation planning functions. And that review is scheduled for November 21st. And as part of that review, we are going to turn the floor over at our TAC meeting, our regularly scheduled TAC meeting of November 21st to Federal Highway Administration to facilitate a conversation and hear directly from folks about how we are doing as an MPO, as the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission. We would encourage any of you as commissioners who wish to participate in that and share your thoughts with Federal Highway or Federal Transit at the TAC meeting. We would encourage you to do so. We'll send you all more information, including dates and times and links and things like that. But we will be giving the floor over to Federal Highway on November 21st at 9:30 for our regularly scheduled TAC meeting to hear from anybody who wishes to speak about Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission and how we perform with transportation planning. So if you're interested and available, we would welcome you to join that conversation and share your thoughts with our federal agencies, and we will let you know more to come. But just wanted to make you all aware that that's happening and that opportunity to provide feedback will be available.
And that's here?
It'll largely be remotely, but you can certainly participate in person if you wish to do so. We can send you a link.
What was the date again?
What's that?
What was the date?
Thursday, November 21st at 9:30.
And Linda will likely be sending all information packet, an agenda on that. And just for the record, that's not just commissioners, that's the public as well. Nate, is that correct?
What's that? Yeah, anybody who wishes.
Anyone? Yeah,
Yeah, November 21st, Thursday.
so
Thursday,
Chuck
November.
Freiberger, you're welcome.
Thank you.
There's no other new business, public comment period, commissioners' insights, anything? Anything online? One thing, Sylvia, the next meeting is 11/26. Is that gonna challenge for, quorum? Is everyone here gonna be able to make it? It's the Tuesday before Thanksgiving.
Tuesday before Thanksgiving, so
I don't know what we do to change that, but
we typically have it that, and we haven't had an issue in the past, so. We will not be serving turkey, but maybe I can convince them turkey on the pizza. We'll see.
Definitely not coming.
Please do come on November 26th because we do need to take action on tip amendment number 7.
that's why
Yeah.
I asked. All right.
Yes.
If there's nothing else, look for a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second, all in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.